Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Auer Time with Crown College football coach John Auer. Auer Time is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Crown College coach questions about the Storm, football or sports in general, or just seek the coach's wisdom about life or whatever's going on out there for you. This week, the coach talks to us about last week's tough loss against Eureka. He gives us a little information about what he's expecting against McMurray this week, and the coach shares with us some insights about how you get your kids to do things they don't want to do for you. So let's get right to Auer Time. Well, let us welcome back Coach Auer this week. Coach, let's begin, first of all, with injuries and team updates from you.
Yeah, we get Tyler Bird back this week. He had a concussion and missed last week. That was a big thing for us, especially pass rush-wise and getting off blocks. I think having him back will not only help us from just his play, but also, too, the ability to rotate defensive linemen. So this week, that's a huge thing. We actually have full defensive line back for probably the first time in 6 weeks. So hopefully that helps us a little bit, especially the amount of chasing we'll have to do this week.
You had this last weekend against Eureka, you guys battled back from being down by 10, I think, at one point, and took the lead. They get a late touchdown, but what you got to be pretty thrilled about the way that your team played, though, in the game.
Yeah, I was excited about the concept of our intensity, and again, across the board, and working hard and doing the things we ask. There's times where I wish we had made more plays and done more things from that standpoint, and I had this conversation with my dad talking about, he said, we played pretty good in that. I think our program is beyond that point of moral victories in doing those things. While I felt good about the way we competed, I still felt like we should have won that game, and I felt like from that standpoint we kind of left one behind, but we talked about this in our Tuesday team meeting about the fact that that's part of life, is the fact that you can have things in your life where you pour everything into and you do things right, and it doesn't result from what you want it to be. And so that was kind of a life lesson in that one. It's not always, you work hard in this and it's always going to turn out to be that way. In this case, it didn't. So now what you do, you go back to work on Monday and you try to work a little bit harder. You try to do things maybe a little bit differently to get a different result.
They seem to have really tried to work on shutting down your running game. Brandon McCormick comes up with 240 yards passing. Tell me a little bit about what you thought of his performance from this Saturday.
Yeah, the biggest thing for him was, in most cases, he put the ball in a place where our receivers could make plays. I think in the past, some of the times he's tried to make the pinpoint pass instead of just putting it on them. And we have some pretty good receivers in doing that. And so a lot of times he was just giving them a chance to make a play. And his composure throughout the game was very good, and I felt like we did better in protection than we did in run blocking. I mean, their defensive line, they had a D tackle in there that was pretty good, and their two defensive ends, and how they presented it was, you're right, they're trying to shut us down run game wise and shut down what we want to do and make us do something that's a little bit outside the norm. And for us, I thought both QBs and receivers stepped up their game.
2 months into the season, where are you assessing your team at this point?
It's weird because it's kind of gone in different runs, and our last 5 games have all been within essentially a touchdown, and all 5 of them could go either way from that standpoint. It's amazing how differently you feel on certain Mondays, Sundays after you get done, and you may have actually played better the week before where you lost. And so from that standpoint, I like the fact of our kids. I enjoy their work ethic and their ability to come back on a Tuesday or on, and practice and look forward to the next game. And we talked about the fact that we have 2 left. We have one at home, Senior Day, and then we go on the road at Iowa the following week. And so, this family as it exists right now will change next year. And so we want to make sure we get the most out of these last 2 weeks.
Looking at this week against McMurray, they also come in here at a 3-4 record. What is it that you see that are some keys for victory for you?
I would say defensively, he does a great job of not necessarily running after it, but just scrambling around, buying time to be able to throw the football. And so from our standpoint, it's keeping him contained. It's keeping the pressure on him, trying to get him, not necessarily even sacks, even more so, just trying to rush him into some throws and doing those things. And then offensively, again, it comes back to executing. We'd like to be able to be, last week was a little bit, it had rained before, a little bit muddy. Now we're back on turf where we don't have that problem anymore. The ability to do both, I think that from our standpoint, and just as an overall team, we've kind of gone week by week where, the defense won it or the offense won it. It'd be nice where we have, and we did. We had one week where we had both from that standpoint, but nice to put it all together. It'd be nice to put it all together on offense and defense and special teams and be multifaceted as far as why we had success.
You addressed about Cory Dorothy, their quarterback, along with Jory and Clemens. The two have made quite a combination this season. What do you try to do to contain those two?
Well, we've done some different things this week. Again, pass rush, we've done some things where, one-on-one pass rush, we went 10 seconds and told the defensive lineman, hey, and move the quarterback around a little bit from that standpoint. Defensive line, I would say that would be a key for us, is not only being able to not allow them to get downhill in their running game, but also that idea of, keeping him in the pocket and making him be a pocket passer.
What do you think needs to happen in these last 2 weeks that you have to get your team to that 500 point?
I'd say just energy, just that energy and confidence. It's tough to go 2 weeks in a row. The first week where we have the ball on the one to go in and win, and then the last week where we get ahead and they come down and score to win it against us. You're an 18, 22-year-old man. It's tough to keep. That confidence and knowing that, hey, I've worked and had this happen to me. It's keeping faith. This is a great chance for us to hold true to our faith in the fact that if I just keep working and keep doing the things, the result will come out differently. But I would say that's a big key. If you've lost and by a lot, you have this mindset. But if it's been close in all of them, then you start thinking a little bit from that standpoint instead of that mindset of, we got to find a way to win.
You mentioned about this being senior day this week, so tell me a little bit about what the emotions are like for players heading into that game.
Yeah, you'd asked about that concept of what about them. I would say we've talked more about from the other guys in that idea of we have 7 seniors. Someday that's going to be you, and your last day you play at home, and you're going to want the other players to put forth the most effort and practice and in film and in the game and doing it. And so we've spent this week talking about the fact, give that to those guys, because in college, you'll find to have seniors, to make it through 4 years of playing and doing this, that's a pretty good accomplishment. You look at percentage-wise across the country and how many seniors make it, how many guys make it through 4 years of playing. It's amazing the low percentage of kids that do it. So those kids that make it, I'd love to give those guys a great Saturday and a great last home game for them, and then next week when we go on the road, a great final game for them to play in.
So your expectation of your juniors, sophomores, and freshmen is that, hey, you got to really give your all for your seniors this year.
Yeah, I would say it's more because you're going to get it from your seniors. They know it's their last game. They know they're coming down to that. You're going to get it from them. It's more so just that responsibility of what are those younger guys going to do for the older guys? How much more are they going to give? What type of effort are they going to give?
Excellent. Getting to our fan questions for this week, we first begin with Kaylee from Plymouth, who asks, what are some of the highlights you've had this season?
I'd say probably one of them was, the trip on the road at Westminster was, after a rough week before, for our kids to keep faith in the coaches and in each other and come out and just, pretty good setting from that standpoint of playing with confidence and come out of there with a win. And that bus trip home was a pretty good trip too as well.
I bet it was. Ben from St. Bonifacius asks, if you were NFL commissioner for the day, what would be some rules that you would change?
Well, you got to find this, and I watch a little bit of NFL football. Probably 90% of the time, the kickoffs are going through the end zone, and then you're getting a commercial before and after it. To me, if we're going to have it on that, just get rid of it. Start everybody off at the 25 or the 20 and do it, because otherwise it seems like it's a pretty good waste of time right now with that many kickoffs going down to the end. I would probably say that would be one, and then I think they've removed more and more things for defensive players to be able to cover. It's becoming harder and harder from that standpoint. And so I would say that idea of being able to get a little more physical inside of that, even inside of that 5-yard span, and making receivers work more to get open.
I hadn't really thought about it. It's like a 7-second segment inside 6.5 minutes of time there. So, yeah, that's true. Byron from Maplewood would like to know, he sees a lot of discussion about hazing and how this is wrong. He knows that sometimes this is a bad thing, but is there some examples where it's a good thing?
It depends. We have this, in our playbook, and we go through it at the beginning of the year. We usually bring in 30, 35 new guys, and it's hard enough to be away from home for the first time ever in your life, and you usually don't have anybody family here. So the more things you do to make them comfortable, the better off you are. And so there's team building activities that you can do and have them do that they're comfortable with, that they may have to, like, a lot of times you'll have singing a school song, their high school song or things like that. Those things are fine, and those things are comfortable in that. But I think, one, the key is asking them, number one, if they're comfortable in doing it, and number two, making sure that you don't take it beyond where it needs to go to from that standpoint. And I think those are keys as far as understanding there's a difference between hurting somebody and helping somebody.
Those are good points. Donald from Plymouth would like to know, you seem like a very humble guy, Coach. Do you have a problem with players and coaches that bloviate excessively all the time?
Yeah, I always think of it this way. I always try to have this concept. There isn't, we tell this to our coaching staff too as well. Guys, there isn't any job that's beneath us. If we have to sweep the hallway, if we have to carry the cooler out to the bus and do those things, I think that's important, and it's good for our guys to see that fact of, I don't see myself as being above you, I see myself as being one of you, and that creates more of a family type atmosphere in that. Anytime you have, more of a hierarchy of this and that, you're creating levels and you're creating different separation. The more things you can do to create that cohesion between you, I think that helps. And again, that comes back to the ability to humble yourself in those cases and do some things that normally you wouldn't think of yourself as having to do. And that goes for players too as well. A lot of times I'll ask players to do something and they'll look at, well, why aren't you asking a freshman to do it? Well, that guy needs to do things as well. And I think as a team, those are things we try to accomplish, is that fact that we're all on the same level.
Do you find that that's really going even beyond football in the sense of you're trying to teach a Christian fundamental out of this as well?
Again, servanthood, I think, is a huge thing from that standpoint, and trying to get guys to realize, we had a kid who got a helmet sticker last week because the entire game, all he did was take a brush and clean off other guys' cleats. Never played one down, never did one thing on special teams. Came on a bus trip, and that's all he did for the entire 3 hours. He took a wire brush and he cleaned off everybody's cleats. And so to understand that each person has their own role in each game and doing the things, that was his role on that Saturday. And he did that role great. And that for other guys to see that, and I had a kid come up to me and say, hey, he should probably get a helmet sticker. So the other guy actually played a ton, was the guy who brought it up. And so, understanding those things and trying to get, it's just like rules. We want to have our guys understand why you're doing certain things. It's the same thing here. I want guys to understand why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be a servant to other people and do things from that standpoint, as far as being able to explain who you are, what you're about, and what your beliefs and values are.
Excellent. Our next question comes from David from Arden Hills, who asks, he's bothered by the fact that he sees all these TV pastors and Christian radio stations who want everybody to feel uplifted all the time, like we're supposed to smile and be happy when terrible things are happening. Jesus was sad and angry at times. Why does it seem that no one wants to accept that these kind of feelings are just as valid?
It comes back to two different things. One, we talk about the fact of, play football, you're going to have to be pretty violent. And again, within the rules and doing those things, and there's got to be a degree of toughness involved with it. But again, along, staying within the rules of the game. But on the other side of that, I also have a guy who I coach with and do a coaching clinic and camp with in the summer. And he's got some family things right now. And that guy is uplifting to me because I watch him and see him, and he's got probably, 4 to 5 different excuses on why he should be down every day, why he should sit there and mope and do this. And he's probably the most joyous guy that I have seen. And so I texted him a couple weeks ago and said, hey, how do you do that? And he says, every morning I wake up, I choose to have joy in my life. And my kids deserve the right to have joy in their life from doing it. So I can either go around and sit and mope about it and do it, or I can make that decision to have joy. And so while I understand that concept of, sometimes you're going to feel joy, attitude a lot of times is your own decision and how you want it to be. And I know there's tough days for us and certain days where practice is even tough, but sometimes we got to just pull our pants up and say, hey, I got to go to work and I got to find joy somewhere in this, because I have to lead a group of people that see me and my attitude and will follow behind in what attitude I have.
Very good answer. Mary from Victoria asks, when you are struggling or having excessive challenges, what do you use for inspiration?
I would say a big thing for me would be coaching staff. My coaching staff is phenomenal as far as just their work ethic. Number two, just things that they say. And so obviously the easy one in that would be our faith, because of the fact of looking at different stories or inspirations or things like that. But I would say those guys would be a huge thing for me right now, would be just watching those guys work and seeing those guys in it, and the amount that they put into it and care that they put into it. And they pick me up, across the board. Those guys, again, you'll see them at a practice, they'll come out and have a good attitude, and it'll bring everybody else. And so I would say the biggest thing for me would be, with those challenges, would have those. When I first was at Crown, I didn't have any assistants that were around during the day, and that was tough. It was tough to put all that burden on yourself and have to sit here and didn't have anybody to talk to. Now, I have coaches around that we can share that burden with each other and talk about those things.
That's excellent. Our last question, which is a rather interesting one this week, comes from Michael and Eden Perry, who says, Coach, there are some things that I don't get. Maybe you can help. My son will bowl over 3 linebackers and race 50 yards at full speed for a touchdown. He will run a mile in track and train 2 hours a day to prepare for that one race. He will lift weights and push himself to the limits, yet I can't get him to walk 5 feet to go get me the remote. What is wrong with this picture?
I'd say it's with kids today. It's they have to have purpose to why they're doing things. And whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in football, whether it's your son in lifting weights, he sees purpose in lifting weights because it's going to lead to better performance, which will lead to more playing time, might lead to college, those types of things from it. And so I would think, within kids, okay, explain to them what's the purpose in you helping us out. And I think a big thing from our standpoint is, you're a part of a family. We each have our own responsibilities to do. Not that getting a remote is a part of that, but understanding that each one of us has a purpose in what we're doing, and each one of us has jobs inside of our family that we have to accomplish each week in order for our family to have success. And so the more things you can do with your son to create that purpose and understand that purpose and get him to realize those things, that it's not just about weightlifting or football or this or that there's other things that can have purpose to in life. I think those will help him realize why he needs to do certain things.
Great answer, Coach. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you much.
We want to thank Coach Auer for joining us on Auer Time this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask a Crown College coach, please send them to us at johnauer@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's johnauer@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Wednesday afternoon so we can give the coach a little bit of time to review those questions before we record our show on Thursday. We want to thank you again for joining us this week. I'm Rob Paneer, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we want to remind you that every Friday, it's Auer Time.